Welcome, dear faithful, to the podcast that dives into the sabotage, betrayal, and murder of the current season of the Traitors. We are your Trader Joes. Hello. Hello, Joes.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe, you want to give it a go?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. What are your Joes today? I have classic Joe today.
Always.
Iced coffee.
I have an Americano Joe.
I am doing a Bronx latte. Bronx is a local, artisanal, dairy-free milk containing water, organic almonds, organic cashews, dates, cinnamon, and sea salt only.
Okay.
Not available in Scotland.
Not available in Scotland, and it only lasts like
2 days.
It's like, yes,
days.
once you get it, you gotta use it. Wow.
But it's great.
That's amazing. Well, enough. Okay, that's it. This is not the episode to do small talk. This is the episode where we get to analyze a true funeral. Dan's funeral. Finally.
He's finally faced his death.
His death.
Not the fall of man.
Not the fall of Dan. The fall of Dan. Girl, the way I watched you come up with that, you were like, okay, I'm workshopping it in my mind first. Okay, now I'm ready to say it.
I had to make sure. I am that girl who works hard for the jokes.
She does. She's
and
that
sometimes they hit, and sometimes
Usually don't, but I liked that one.
Quit.
No, this episode was I think we kind of knew what was going to happen.
Totally.
And I'll say it here, and I'll probably say it this whole conversation. When you know what's happening and it's still good,
that's how you know it's good.
These people are doing something right. Like, yeah. I'm still entertained.
Exactly.
Absolutely. It's not about like being gooped.
They did all they could to try and convince us that there was even an alternative to Dan going home this episode.
Yeah, totally.
They really pushed the Parv thing. And then, you had Dan going at the round table, but it was so obvious.
Which is interesting because I think that will still be... It was interesting for a person in the show to have that take of like, we're focusing on one person right now, but don't forget about the other person that we're still hot on.
We had the Janelle episode. Now we have the Dan episode. We should probably guess who's getting there next.
I think Parvati's getting her gig.
But that is...
we have a potential
I
that
don't
things
know.
might change.
Yeah.
We don't know, though.
There's like this, this idea in a lot of these shows where like when someone's story is wrapped up, that's how you know they're going home.
Right.
So we definitely, we got Dan top to bottom this episode.
Totally. Well, let's start from the top then.
So instantly, this television show does not care to like really drag you on. Like they used to be like the most cliffhanger of cliffhanger shows.
Yeah.
But this episode, Alan immediately narrates, the Traitors tried to kill Bergie last week. He's gonna survive, so let's see what happens. So they're not even pausing for that. Again, that's another one where it's like that you get rid of that cliffhanger and you still enjoy it.
Yeah. But I wonder if if it might buy time in the show, because I think a lot of action is going to happen between now and the end.
Yeah, it could be that. And I also think it lets us watch in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, I think if we don't know if Bergie's going to be murdered or not, if they don't tell us that, we're just waiting to see the last one in.
Right.
But because we know it, we're kind of like, it's almost like we know, just like how we know who the traitors are. We know we're like one step ahead of the faithful here. We can see Parvati kind of watch each person come in. We can watch Phaedra. I think we're just able to watch people a little closer at breakfast, which is just a different way of letting us watch television. I think it treats the audience with some respect too.
Yes, I love when shows can like, we trust the audience that they're following along.
Yeah.
We don't need to kind of
they kind of know what's going out. So we've got Kate, Parv, and Cirie in first at breakfast. Parvati's always just what's going on. So nonchalant at breakfast. Kate says that the breakfast is prepared for her because she's new to the castle. And Kate predicts that a Bravo celebrity is going to be the one who's murdered because they were the ones who kind of were most vocal at the last roundtable. We're coming off this big Housewives thing a couple episodes ago. They got it wrong with Janelle. So she predicts that a Bravo person's gonna go.
That's Phaedra and MJ. That's it, right?
I guess that's who's left. You know,
Not many options.
Tamara's gone, Lartha's gone.
Cirie.
But she
Sheree.
walked in with
Sheree.
them, though.
Oh, that's right.
But Sheree's in with
Right,
them.
right.
Yeah. No one thinks Sheree's going anywhere.
No. Sheree is going to make it to the finals, and it's going to be so funny. It's gonna be like a cult like favorite. I feel like it's like Sheree was so.
I think her reaction
and
to
that's why we
finding
love
out, her reaction to finding out that Phaedra's a traitor is probably going to be like the meme we
big
haven't
reveal.
seen coming.
They're gonna save it, yeah. And like there have been memes of because people are like, I can't believe Sheree's still in this game, and then someone tweeted that was like, Sheree made a fashion show with no fashion. Of course she's gonna make it, and she retweeted it, and she was like, "That's right."
That's
so it's
correct.
like she knows that it's her thing.
If you can't make fun of yourself, how are you gonna make fun of other people? So
Exactly.
then we start to see Dan's confessional count just fly off the handle this episode. Like he's the only one getting
He's
confessionals
the
this
only
episode.
one getting talking heads. Yeah.
It's also how we know he's probably going. And he says like because we know Bergie's been murdered. We know in the last episode it was set up for him to make the decision because he was catching heat from Janelle at last roundtable. He says to get a big reward, you've got to take a big risk, which is like totally cliche. And at this point, we just know like it's gonna be bad.
So this whole thing has already been like Parvati's like, we gave Dan this kill. If this doesn't work, it's all Dan's fault. Now that it's been a week after, like I think Dan was gonna lose no matter what decision he makes, right?
There's a lot of what Dan does in this episode that I keep thinking like it's gotta be so obvious.
It's gotta be so obvious that he's just like making whatever, yeah.
And we get, and like quickly after that moment, we get this comment from Phaedra where she says like, I didn't want my Burgalicious to go. I didn't want that to happen because she doesn't know about the whole like leak of who's got the shield or not.
Yes.
So she's thinking
they
that
discussed
Bergie's
it in the turret, but
Yeah.
she wasn't told.
She wasn't told, and
Yeah.
so she's thinking like Bergie's probably gone. And even with that, based on how well she's playing, I hope that her mindset is let everybody else mess up first.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Like take the credit, take the kill, take the shot and miss. Like it's more blood on your hands.
Totally. I think the turret time last episode and the turret time we get in this episode shows that is everyone knows that that's Phaedra's only option to survive. It's like this is your lot. This is this is your burial. You have to do it. I can't get messy. I can't get involved.
She's like, I'm just barely showing up to the hospital. So
Yes.
Working
Yes.
so far.
it's working so far. So
It is.
if it wasn't intentional in the beginning, I'm sure she knows by now that this is working in her favor because as we see all episode, no one one person suspects, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we'll get it.
So then we're kind of, guessing who it's going to be. We're down to the last two people, and the last two people that are going to come in are Trishelle, John, and Bergie, which were also the three people who voted for Dan last episode. So on top of all of that, Dan is in this room with the three people not yet there who voted for him. So any chance he had of trying to like not have a hand in this murder or not appear to have a hand in this murder, like the producers also said like, absolutely not, sir. Like you are going to have to get yourself out of this one.
Yeah.
And a couple people suspect John because I guess he would be an easy kill, but
Yeah. There's no point in doing easy kills anymore.
Yeah, and we get these like lovely asides from Sandra, like, well, maybe it's John. Like, I think she is playing
stupid,
and it's
Yes,
good.
I totally
It's like
agree. I totally
but it's
agree.
like stupid on purpose.
Yeah.
So John, Bergie, and Trishelle are the last three. They all voted for Dan, and Dan. Oh, this is where I cannot understand Dan's gameplay.
I 100% agree.
He says, well, it would be easy to pin it on me because these three people voted for me. Like, why give any more fuel to why give any more fuel to the fire? And B, why say it? And this is where I think that he thinks he's so much smarter than all the other pieces happening.
Totally.
That he's assuming everyone will just think it's too like that's his. I think that's his strategy in his mind is like, let me do the obvious because they'll think it's too obvious, so then they'll know it's not, or they'll think it's not right, and it's
right.
It's not working.
What is your opinion on Big Brother players playing the traitors? Because I've seen a lot of discourse now of like, it's just they don't
starting to change.
Last.
Yeah.
Well, I think in Dan's case, he's like, I didn't get any votes. He had the whole funeral thing on Big Brother, but it's like he was competing with people who had never been on a reality show.
That's the other thing.
Never been on TV. Some of which were recruited to be on that show and didn't even understand the concept of Big Brother. So like, it's not the same audience. It's not the same. You're not working with the same.
It's not the same crowd.
Right?
Yeah. So you can't just do the same thing, even though that's what you attempted to
It's
do.
a lot like Cirie in the first season. She knew that about her.
Which is
so she used that to her
advantage. When you play with non-gamers, yes, you can play. Yeah.
He thinks he's with non-gamers.
Yeah, he thinks he's that much better than them. That like he thinks he's on a different level.
Yes, and like Adam watched this episode with me, and he literally was like, he thinks that Bravo Lebs, the housewives specifically, are not gamers, but their MO in the show is to sit at the first seat at the reunion show. It is a competition for them. Who gets the most screen time, who gets the most story in their show. So it's like, it's that thing of it's not comprehending,
And I think that this is also the episode where it became obvious to me that like the competition reality people, like they're fractured, like
they're falling apart.
They're totally falling apart.
I know, the gamers are not.
they're dropping like flies. We could blame Dan. We could blame Janelle for blowing it up last week. I don't know, but it's just so obvious that for people who come from social games, to be halfway through a game like this and not have reliable relationships is just mind-boggling. Like,
yes.
I think their hubris is just like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, perhaps they kind of like, let's do what Cirie did, but they realized that like it doesn't apply this season because the cast is so much different. But it's interesting that like the first few episodes of this show were really like pointing us towards the gamers are going to be in control because they know what they're doing. And now in this back half of the season, we're like shifting towards like the housewife / Bravo celebrities / Love Island /
House of Commons,
the extended reality show universe.
/ The Bachelor are now like the new reality show geniuses.
They're just too smart for their own good.
Totally.
And that is also really enjoyable, I think, for people like us who enjoy kind of critiquing it and breaking it down. It's really nice to see like the typical strategy not steamroll through. It's really nice to see really strong people fall, Janelle exception, but we'll still talk about it.
We'll still defend her no matter what.
We will avenge the fallen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Trishelle and John come in, and then you kind of have that little fake out on Bergie being murdered. And of course we get a beautiful shot from Phaedra to say like, oh, I love my Burgalicious.
Not my Burgalicious.
Oh Lord, not Ekin-Su.
Not my Burgalicious. Remember that, listeners. Not my Burgalicious.
She said, not my Burgalicious. I love her.
I love
Can we just can someone like supercut that onto like Fergie? Onto like a Fergie backing track, because Burgalicious definition make the Dans go crazy. Okay?
Burgalicious. He changed his Instagram names. His name is now Burgalicious on Instagram.
That's his handle?
Yes. And Phaedra went in and commented at all of his pictures and was like, looking good, Burgalicious. I miss you, Burgalicious.
You know what Phaedra said? She said, I am only as high as those who I bring up with me. And so she is bringing Bergie up to her level. Yes. Elevating him. Watch her have an ultimate girls trip to whatever Midwestern state he lives in.
Absolutely.
And they're going to go see him. So we get him, Phaedra has this beautiful opportunity to mourn her Burgalicious. And then knock, knock, knock. Just kidding. Who's there?
Bergie comes in. I have a shield. I had a shield.
Bergie is still like a 17-year-old every time he gets so amped up about things.
Just that flushed face.
Flushed face. He can't keep his body still.
Audience surrogate about him, right? Like we're kind of seeing like, oh, like he's kind of like us. Like if we were playing this game, this is the story that I would want to follow along.
He's very much the like, I'm going to tell, I won't show you, I'll just tell you. Like, I'm just going to tell you and state the obvious because he says, someone gave me a death warrant last night, but I have the shield. And it's like, everyone in the room's like, no shit. Like, yes, we know. Let us react. What does Phaedra say?
Phaedra says, thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus. Jesus is why he has a shield. Oh, look at God.
Fergalicious.
Fergalicious.
And so, you get all these cutaways between like Peter and Trishelle and this little, the Faithful Five crew saying like, game on. Peter's getting really excited at this point.
Yeah.
And he basically tells the group, he was like, as people are settling down before Alan gets there, he says, I leaked it to Dan, Parvati, and CT. That he had.
So there you go. They're the three.
That I had the shield and he didn't. And then, so those are the three. So one of them is going to be the traitor. Mm-hmm. Face cracks on Parvati and Dan, especially CT's like, yeah, it's not me.
He looks confused. Sandra.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, they play it up here to us, like with the editing, but it does feel like Parvati and Dan are acting so poorly, right? Like, there's no way you can be like, you look and act like you've been caught.
They're all of these one-on-one conversations that they both attempt are
they're bad,
cringe. Like, it is. If I was playing a game with them, it's so obvious. It's like when you're going home on Big Brother and you're trying to campaign, and people are just saying, and giving you lip service. Like, I've seen better campaigning on Big Brother than these two conversations that we got between Dan and Peter and Parvati and Peter.
Yes, they were not. It was so obvious that they're like
so bad.
Yeah.
And when we find out about the leaking, Sandra's like, Who'd you tell? So she's excited because she's like, dang, someone in here is playing good.
She gets very excited. I think we have a screenshot of Sandra.
Yeah, what did she say? She said, who'd you leak it to? I want to know. Oh, dang. I think it's really fun watching Sandra just observe this whole game.
Yes.
Because she's doing fine, but she's also probably taking in like, okay, Peter, like that was a good move. Oh, wow. And I wonder why no one is really like playing to her. We're not seeing it.
She's not in the big group.
She's not in the big group. She's clearly not a suspect because no one's bringing her name up. She hasn't received votes.
Not at all.
But they're also not really drawing her in. I don't know if they're afraid. I don't know if she's just trying to like hang back with people she already knows are traitors.
Right. I genuinely think if the Faithfuls win this season, I think Sandra has the best shot.
We'll be there.
Because she knows enough that I think she knows it's Parvati. I think she'll be able to figure out that it's Phaedra.
Yeah, if Phaedra sticks around, she'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see everybody's like just reactions to like what happened at this episode's roundtable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do wish we were getting more from Sandra. I really wish, because I just want to know what she's thinking and what she knows when and what she is or isn't doing with that information, because clearly it's working. And I just wish we were let in a little bit more to her game.
Yeah. But I mean, this is how she plays. This is really how she plays. She plays it like Dan, where it's like, I'll lay low until I don't have to anymore. And the gamers have called that out. That's like, that's kind of what she does.
She's laying low. However, she's still present in the house.
That's it.
She's involved in conversations. Like we said a couple episodes ago, she did the whole thing with Larsa. Somehow escaped that unscathed. And
the thing with Janelle. But I think what helps is that with Janelle, there were enough people that backed her that were also wrong. That she kind of is like, well, we're just doing this is our job. We're just trying to do our job. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dan and Parvati just admit at the table, because they've been got, that like it was leaked to them. Dan says like, I'm a faithful. It's terrible. It's not good. And Parvati's kind of saying the same thing. I do think Parvati's the strategy she comes up with of trying to pin it on Peter by playing so hard, I don't think that's a bad move.
It feels like the only option, really.
Right, because at least you've got evidence and real things to draw on. Later we see who Dan tries to pin it on, and he's drawing at straws there. But Phaedra basically is like, I'm good. Let me get true Phaedra fashion.
Yes.
Let me get back to breakfast.
Let me cut this meat. I'm gonna cut this meat.
Yeah. Ooh, anybody got? I mean, we got the anybody got boiled eggs?
Boiled eggs,
like where's
meat.
Like
It's
all
amazing.
Phaedra cares about is eating breakfast and keeping her name out of people's mouths.
Absolutely.
So this basically tells us, like, after the first act, like, is it going to be Dan or Parvati?
It's
like, we were set up for that. And so Alan arrives.
This Tintin look, honey.
Well, break it down for us.
Break it down. Okay, blue beret, bangs. And when I do say bangs, I do mean it in the plural sense where there are two bangs. One
Very
and
small.
two. There are two bangs flicked up.
Two bangs of frosted hair.
A blouse with a frilly like collars.
A pussy bow.
Yes. The tartan skirt.
Kilt. I think it's a kilt.
It's a kilt.
Come on.
I don't know. And what did I already forgot what the thing is.
I think it was called a spran.
The bag.
The bag.
The bag.
Spran.
The bag.
Yeah. The bag.
But what's very important is that the beret and the blouse are like a bright blue. The kilt is a bright red. And when he came in, everyone had a visceral reaction. Everyone was like, Alan! Oh my God, Alan!
It's like when Rue comes into the workroom and we're going to react to whatever they're wearing. It's the same. It's the same energy.
I do buy that they are like, wow, a bright
Actually
color.
gooped. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, wow, a bright blue for once. My God, I'm so tired of seeing blacks.
It's so good.
And it's so warm in the castle. Like, there's no bright blue color.
Yes. Not to mention the frames also match.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The frames match the blouse.
Frames match the blouse, match the socks.
Match
the socks. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
We love a coordinated king. So Alan comes in and says, well, everyone's still here. There was a murder attempted last night. So I'm just here to say cryptic things and look absolutely spectacular. And I think that
he's doing a great job.
Of the quotes from this episode, that is one of 2 or 3 things that is possibly going on my new Instagram bio. I'm just here to say cryptic things and look absolutely spectacular. That's one. We'll get to the other one later. Yeah. But it's just very, self-deprecating, and it's perfect. He needs an Emmy nomination for this.
Totally.
So we have a quicker post-breakfast scramble because I think we know what's going on at this point. We know it's Dan and Parv. And I think like the only real things to note kind of after this that are worth kind of dig into are these one-on-ones with Peter and Parvati and Dan and Parvati. And we already said like it's not.
It's giving
great.
it's giving plea, obviously, right? Of like, let me clear my case. But the case is, I'm not a faithful. You just have to believe that. And if you don't, then you're done. So there is no case to be cleared, unfortunately.
Yeah. So right before that, we do get this like group that Phaedra's in where she says like, well, no one leaked it to me. And she's talking to Dan, and she's with Peter and MJ, who are kind of 2 people who would be leading the charge.
Yes.
And they don't suspect her.
They're like, yeah, isn't it crazy? Like, Phaedra is and
just contrasting these conversations, I think, is really important here because you can see Phaedra has relationships with these people.
With everyone.
She can walk up, she can kiki, she can cut aside, she can make a joke, she can have a conversation, she can discuss people's status.
She's calm.
Parvati and Dan cannot even walk into a room. And at this point, it's like, you are cooked.
You're done.
That is even Janelle
are there
could walk
any
into
boiled
a room.
eggs?
Yeah.
These 2 are the boiled eggs.
Yeah, are they for real? Like, they're cooked. Like, even Janelle could walk into a room and at least kind of have a conversation with Trishelle or like try to get along with Tamra or something, even though it turned on her pretty quick. But like, they don't have any relationships with the faithfuls, and that's just really illustrated in these conversations. And so both Parvati and Dan have one-on-ones with Peter, where, Parvati's strategy is, well, why wouldn't you be the traitor?
Right.
You're acting really strong. You're rallying a lot of people, which is a valid argument.
And I think it's her strongest option right now too. It's like, well, I'm just doing exactly what you're doing and suspecting people and bringing people up. So you're suspicious to me.
Yeah, and it's like at least bring up a name of someone who's already in conversation. Absolutely. Because I think that is a stronger strategy than just trying to point the finger outside of that group. But at least just point at someone who's making moves, which Peter clearly is in a big way.
Right.
And Peter basically says, like, I still suspect it's you, but whatever.
Go off, Queen.
Go off. Dan's conversation doesn't get anywhere fast at all.
No. It doesn't even feel like it should have happened.
The worst line that I heard here was when he said, just like, I hope you're not surprised when I get up there and say I'm a faithful. And I was like,
come on.
Girl.
And note that he's still not giving any names to these people
at all.
Yeah. He's like, I'm still saving it. Like, because he thinks it's going to save him, but it's not.
The strategy has to be like, you have to move the attention elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Just defending yourself.
It's not enough.
Doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work here. It does not work here.
Totally.
So we know like it's going to be Dan or Parvati tonight, and this is what we get kind of going into today's mission, which was exciting.
As a lover of all the missions that they've famously, I love all the missions that they do in the Traitors. I will be leading our discussion. Okay, so we're gonna check out our agenda.
Okay, corporate RJ.
So Alan is back. He's added a black cape for the mission. So, but then like
and
the sleeves, right? Gloves.
I think they're gloves.
Their gloves go all the way past the elbow that match the kilt. Still brill.
Work.
Still absolutely brill. So the prize pot currently is $75,500, and there is an opportunity to add $20,000 in 60 minutes for a mission where they have to collect ammunition
pieces
and pieces of the catapult to build a catapult, and then they gotta throw it. And if they activate the catapult in time under the 60 minutes, and they win the 20,000.
It's an IKEA challenge.
It's an IKEA challenge. Pick up the parts and pieces
and do it in 60 minutes.
Yes.
Now, an interesting observation. This challenge takes place in UK too as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. But it's easier
on UK.
Yeah. Remember, they didn't have to take like, I don't know what you would call it, but like the big piece of the catapult, that actually like shoots it.
The launcher.
The launcher was like already there. They had to collect smaller pieces.
Yeah,
okay.
So it was more assembled than it is here. And I think they had 45 minutes versus 60 minutes. But objectively, a much easier version of this challenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is at the infamous hill that, if you're a season 1 watcher, this is the same hill that kind of, I don't even remember what the challenge was, but they were also collecting pieces.
Yes.
Right?
They were rolling barrels. That's right. Yeah. And Kate, it's kind of in place of that challenge.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kate at the time in that challenge was not picking up anything because she was like, no one believes me. No one wants to vote with me with the Traitors. We're just giving more money for the Traitors to steal. So I'm not helping.
So this challenge, I had a thought when I watched it where I thought, what if the Traitors, like if the prize pots were totally different? Like if a traitor could kind of like in the mole, if a traitor could get to the end, they would have like a greater prize pot.
Right.
And so then they would have some motivation to like mess things up or sabotage.
Or if it's something that they deem like, oh, you did a great job. Maybe not even sabotaging, but like if you go unscathed, no one says your name in the banishment, we'll add $500.
Yeah.
Some little tweaks. Yeah.
That'd be cool. But I wish we could have a little sabotage in these challenges.
Yeah. So Kate is like, Kate is basically like, I know Alan picked this challenge.
She wishes.
So that I could have to redo this trauma again. Because of the last time I did it, I was just like throwing barrels of money. So they get to the path, but along this path, there are specific shield ammos that if they collect, that means they get a chance to shoot for the one shield that you can win in this mission. In the first season, I believe it was all the armory passes back in the day. So
so much better this time.
Yes, absolutely. They have to cross the river.
They're fording the river.
And the way I love the drama, when they see the river and they're like, we have to, is she gonna jump from there? Are we gonna cross through that? The Austin office shared this picture of Cirie, Parvati, and Sandra having to go through, and how it looks like the same reaction from First Wives Club when they are on the window cleaner.
On the crane, it's the same energy. Like as soon as I saw it,
absolutely. Cirie is absolutely Bette Midler. Goldie Hawn is Parvati, and Sandra is Diane Keaton. That's lore.
Yeah, Parvati. Canon. Goldie Hawn has Parvati 100%.
Yes. It's that tweet that I sent you guys of like, who was it? Oh, Dakota Johnson will play Parvati in the Survivor biopic.
I could see that. I mean, Dakota Johnson on the Ellen interview. That's not the truth. Like that.
Yes,
Parvati.
that's Parvati. That's Black Widow Parvati. That's Parvati in trying to talk to the Faithful Five of like, it's very interesting, Peter, that you're leading this charge. It's just very interesting that you have these private conversations.
It's very off-putting.
Very off-putting.
Very off-putting.
Yeah, these three coming through is just ridiculous.
So funny.
Camp.
So there's this, so these three are going through, and then we have two parallels here, right? Still in the river. This river's the best part of the episode.
I think it is. Funny. I think it's so good.
On one hand, Phaedra Parks having to ford a river is so funny, and CT is like absolutely helping her. And they kind of like have a showmance this entire challenge because he is leading her. They are holding hands to lead each other through.
He is guiding her through. We talked about the tweets like with the bodyguard comparison.
It's giving Bodyguard. Absolutely.
It is, with the music and everything.
Absolutely. And then on the other hand, we have Trishelle and Kevin, who are also fording the river. They're helping each other. Kevin is genuinely helping Trishelle. And then Trishelle is like, there is a shield passed over there.
I have to get it.
And she goes from needing help to like
pushing Kevin in the water so that
it was as if the spirit of Janelle Pierzina came over her in that moment.
And it's like, I'm veto queen.
She
I have
threw
to get
Kevin
the veto
away.
Very Janelle energy.
It's so good. And just like pushes Kevin away to try and get the shield. It's great. It's great. Sandra picks up, because they're kind of just like scattered throughout the mission, right? Along the path. So it's almost like, okay, who wants that one?
Is that off again?
Trishelle gets one. There's one coming up, and Sheree's like, "Do you want that one?" She's like, "Sure, okay, I'll grab it." And she was like, "Oh, they're both heavy," but she's keeping it.
She's committed. She says, "I'm gonna."
She's committed. Sandra picks one up, and she's like, "I'm gonna take my chance," and picks it up too. And then later, Parvati also tries to get one.
Just wants to play faithful.
And then Peter also picks one up. Those are the people that will be eligible to get a shield later on. So they get to this fucking catapult, and they have to like they're literally pushing pieces. It's crazy. All the guys are pushing and then the actual body of the catapult still needs to be pulled to the spot. And so all the guys are like trying so hard to push it. All the women are up front, like basically with all the pieces carrying one giant plank. And then Alan is like, to be eligible for the shield, you have to put all of those shield ammo boxes on this hay bale or whatever. Sure.
Lock in your chance to play.
Because all the girls are ahead. They're all putting theirs in. And Peter's the one guy who technically caught one. And Kate is holding it. And Kate's like, I don't really want the shield. I really don't care. I don't want it.
She's just there to mess around.
It's so
I love it.
good. She is doing everything that you don't want her to do.
Exactly.
And it's making great TV. Mm-hmm. So Peter runs because he's like, I know my ass is going to be murdered tonight if I don't win the shield. So Kate literally drops the shield next to the hay bale, just like drops it on the ground.
It opens
and then
up.
Runs. It opens and she just drops it. And Peter is running. All the guys are like, Peter, go get, like, it's
go get a shield.
It's so funny. I'm living for Kate. Truly.
Great.
It's so great. They get to the catapult, they shoot the thing, they make it. Whatever. They're gonna get this $20,000 anyway. So they add it, and everyone who was able to pick up a shield, like ammo, gets their chance. First of all, John was the one who pulled the catapult.
Yes,
I'm so excited.
And everyone, including Phaedra, was like, John! Yes, John! That when I saw Phaedra do that, I was like, this is why. No one will suspect her.
No one suspects her at all.
It's solely, she has a relationship with every single person. It's amazing. I would love to watch her do to Celebrity Big Brother or like something. It would just be, it's so fascinating to watch her in like a purely social, it's just fascinating.
She'd still do well.
Yeah, I think so. I think she'd still make farm. So they shoot all of the shields and Peter comes up the shortest and Cirie is closest to the bullseye.
Okay.
Cirie Whitfield wins the shield, and it is, no one is worried about Cirie.
Not much of a reaction.
Not much of
Everyone
a reaction.
says, oh, okay.
Not a lot of talking heads, honestly. Cirie's just
no
like, I
reaction.
finally won a shield. That's it.
Great scene.
Sling for your life,
It's
Alan
so
says.
It's so good. It's so good. So we get back home from the mission, and even in the cars, everyone is already like, so Dan's gonna be out tonight, right, everyone? Like all the other cars, because Dan and Parvati are in the same car. I think it's like Peter and Trishelle, right? Peter and someone.
Yeah.
Obviously, they did that on purpose.
And Peter's really playing up, well, this is my last night,
My last
so I'm going to
night,
go big.
Yes. So
We're
it's
gonna
like,
do it.
he basically is like, if you guys murder me tonight, like do it like gently or whatever.
Yeah,
And everyone's like,
you'll also know it's Dan.
Exactly. Kate is putting a lot of heat on Parvati, and Cirie agrees. Trishelle, like we said, Trishelle and Peter are calling out Dan in the car. And when they get back, Parvati immediately sees like a group of faithful, obviously led by Peter, but she kind of sees this clear group led by Peter. Bergie's there, John, Kevin, and Trishelle, which is so funny because John thought Kevin was the traitor for the longest time. Peter and Kevin
still might.
Yeah. Peter and Kevin had that stupid ass plan of like, let's fake fight. Girl, that's done.
That's done. We never revisited that.
Yeah. There's this moment where like in dinner, that they're all talking. Parvati's about to come in the room and Peter's like, sorry, wait 1 second.
Tells her to stay out.
Closes the door. They have a conversation just to be like, okay, it's Dan and Parv, right? We're just picking between Dan and Parv. It's Dan.
Okay, you can come back in now.
Okay, come back in.
Oh,
sorry.
Bad.
Messy.
Kind of painful.
But okay, producer hat on,
Okay,
editing hat on. This is painting a picture of what I think. If Parvati goes home next week, I think they're still painting that like this is something that Parvati deals with all the time. And even in her talking heads, she's like, I won Survivor. I have been in finals in Survivor, being in the same situation before. I know how to get out of this. And I think what she does, she comes in and it's like very sus, very off-putting Peter, really putting it on Peter because that's like her only way out. And I think it's smart. It's a smart move.
She leans into it. She leans
does.
into it. She doesn't appear obviously on the defense. Like we were kind of contrasting that with Dan's approach. And so I think that's why, Dan ends up falling first.
Being the first one, yeah.
So that's a great point, and I think it'll be really interesting to see if we are getting these moments like you're saying, and then her ultimately kind of triumphing over them.
I think that's what we're getting.
Okay, I'll watch that, producer Arjo.
Producer Arjo, that's my eye. I don't know. It's something about the headbands. We said it in the pre-show. There is something about it that they're making it like she might be the main character of the show.
Yeah. One thing I find interesting about this group of 5 is that CT is not included with Trishelle.
Included, absolutely.
Like where is CT? I don't even know right now. Where
he's with Phaedra.
That's the thing. If Phaedra wins, it is going to be because of his trust with CT having.
CT's gonna be there at the end watching that. Oh,
I think so. I think, yeah.
I mean, it's like bring the least. How do I say this? The least strategic people with you, who will be the least likely to, who will basically assume, oh yeah, we're done. Let's call the game over.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, the seed gets planted later on that Trishelle might also suspect Phaedra. What if that ends up being a callback later of Trishelle and CT not agreeing with one another, and CT ends up picking Phaedra over Trishelle, and Trishelle goes home because of it?
That would be
Producer
wild. Oh, that would be wild to watch that, and then for Trishelle to be revealed. That would be pretty wild. Yep.
Yeah.
Or if Phaedra chooses to murder Trishelle.
Right.
Because, she doesn't want someone
fully incapacitate
her sweet CT. Yep.
To just trust her.
And just cutting off his assets. Yeah.
It's possible.
Woo.
Very
okay,
smart.
a lot to see.
But Sandra, when Parvati interrupts this group. Also, Sandra's not in this group, right? You know what this group is giving me? It's giving me Nerd Herd season 6.
Oh, yes. 100%.
And as someone who unfortunately was an Yvette stan, I really wanted Yvette to win.
Okay, we're done.
This podcast is over. Thank you for listening.
You.
It was a beautiful 6.
Can you ask Adam if he could just take your spot?
I unfortunately know the Nerd Herd very well. Unfortunately.
Wow. Okay, Bo.
Sandra is calling out that like, Parv, you're next. We're already onto you. So I'm seeing this, and I think this is when this rivalry comes in too, right? It's like,
and if she goes around and if she goes around saying like, here, it's Parv, here's why, people don't listen to her. She's got plenty of scoop on Parv and plenty to pull on, plenty to point to.
Yes. So the heat is on Dan, and Dan is going to everyone. It's like, I need to really, I've worked so hard going into this, and I really wanted to make sure that I am prepared. So I just need for you to listen, like have an open ear, open mind, open heart to me, Dan, a good guy, and literally seats everyone. It's like, yeah.
Sure, dude.
CT's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is, and like, I think like you were saying earlier, Jeff, Dan's used to playing with people who aren't as smart as him, who aren't as good as him. I don't want to say smart, but who aren't as strategic and who aren't as with it as him. And he's met his match in a lot of ways. Yes. Maybe they're not as calculated. Maybe they're not 74, steps ahead.
Right.
But these are
people
sussing it out. They're used to figuring people out. They're used to dissecting relationships and interrogating people's kind of approaches. And it's like, yes.
Literally everyone left on the show is a person that has to deal with other people in a show format.
100%.
That like they all have some sort of social strategic skill.
Yep.
So they walk.
Match your match.
They walk to the banishment.
Oh, so good tonight. Dramatic music.
Walk into the banishment.
Into the banishment. Traitor first.
And we start with Dan. After some awkward silence is edited in about who's going to talk first, Dan says, you know what? It's time. I'm going to lay out my case. So, he says, who do you think the least suspicious people are? Who are the people who have not received votes so far? Right. And people raise their hands. Bergie, cirie, Phaedra, Sandra, and Parvati. Then he says, let's look at the voting patterns. He rules out Sandra because all of her votes are explained well. Cirie because there was just one weird vote with John. She explained it, he says. Bergie, he says, Bergie always goes with the crowd. So that leaves Parvati and Phaedra.
Face crack. Face crack. The cutaways in this entire roundtable.
I wish we had Parvati a live cam of just Phaedra's face.
I know. I want the full. I want it in like true time
because she was truly like, "Where is this going?" The audacity to take this where this is going, and then the decision of like, "Okay, you're done." You know what I mean?
It all came down
a journey.
So. Then he goes on to rule out Parvati because, the only strange vote was for Kevin, and he says that she explained it at the time. So that leaves us with Phaedra. So then he goes in about why Phaedra. He said that she voted out Ekin in the round table. The next day, Ekin was murdered. And then all the breakfast reactions for Marcus, comforting Larsa when she left. Tamra saying they're coming after the housewives. Oh, not my burgalicious. And that she will never be brought up by anyone else because, everyone likes her, which is the most suspect thing. Phaedra says, you've been watching me from day one then? Which is interesting.
We already know Dan is going home, right? There is no way this is going to work, but like,
I think he was very convinced that this was going to be
He was so convinced that it was going to work.
And I do think we got like led on a good little path here of like, who is he gonna pin it on? Because that was the one thing that they didn't tell us, which was who is he gonna try to pin it on? Yeah. So I think that was like the buildup that they were really giving us. And you go into it thinking like maybe it is gonna be Parvati, maybe he's gonna throw it to Parvati, and then like you also see Parvati kind of like, wait, is it me? It's not me. Okay, it's not me. Oh wait, it is. Like kind of her whole face journey, and then when it lands on Phaedra,
cooked. Done. Because honestly, if he had done Parvati instead, there could have been a chance where he stayed.
Possibly could have done it, I think.
He could have split the votes.
Her rebuttal would not have been as good as
strong
as going to be.
And she has an easier reputation to throw out. Like she's a winner on Survivor. She's like known to be schemy. Like there's just so much more he could have drawn on quickly in that moment.
So
go ahead.
So Phaedra starts responding to all these allegations, and says, I voted for Ekin-Su because of all the issues with Janelle and, Ekin-Su pointing to Janelle and Janelle pointing back. Everybody knows that. And then she goes into the breakfast reactions where this is where the whole table seems to kind of turn on Dan, right? Even more so. Kate jumps to her defense and says, like, not my burgalicious was problematic to you.
That is so good. Oh Lord, Sweet Cheese and that Ekin-Su is up there, but honestly, top contender for most iconic line in this show. Not my burgalicious was problematic to you.
I mean, she's been there a day.
And she's been there a day, and she's like,
day. Okay, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, dude. It's giving okay, dude energy. Absolutely.
And she points out, why would I vote off Bergie? Like, I love my burgalicious. Still again, she didn't know about the shield leak.
That was a good one to drop.
That's truly, yeah.
The nail.
And then she goes, and then Dan says, it's always a little extra with you. And everyone is like,
have you seen her?
Have you seen her? Or she's like, I'm very extra. And then we get Phaedra's iconic response. I do too much because you do too little.
There is so much to unpack here. If I was like a sociologist studying,
please do it still.
It's just there's a coded language, obviously, when it comes to it's always a little extra. Obviously, you're gonna say 100%. That to a Real Housewife of Atlanta. Okay. There is like so much that's going in here. Obviously, I don't think any of this is at play, but Dan says, there was an interview of Dan kind of talking about his demise, and he says it's like, I knew Phaedra was going to win. There is no chance that she was going to go by unscathed. There was no chance that anyone was going to catch on to her. So It felt like a really bold move, but it was just not the numbers.
Not in this game. It was like, when people they know they're getting voted out in Big Brother, and they just like
they plant seeds. They throw everything
out. Yep. Right before they get evicted. It was that kind of speech from him. It was clearly he was rehearsing that speech in his hotel room the night before. He was getting ready for it. Why? I mean, he even said, like, going after Phaedra, I think in one of these dozen interviews that he did the other day, like, that was the mistake. Cirie said on Tamra's podcast that was his fatal mistake. Like,
because there was truly nothing yet that no one had any suspicion at all. If he actually wanted to do this down the road, because we were scared in the earlier episodes, like, I think they're planting the seeds to put mistrust, for people not to trust Phaedra, but they never really did that.
Didn't go anywhere.
They couldn't do it.
No.
I think they were too afraid to breach it, honestly.
Yeah.
I do too much because you do too little. That's the other contender for my new Instagram bio.
It's
it might
so
happen.
good.
Yeah, it's a good
So
one.
good. And it perfectly captures.
How did she come up with this? Okay, well, yeah, she's a lawyer.
She's
I
a
get
fucking
it.
lawyer. Yes.
She's a fucking lawyer.
It's obvious.
Like, and you do see leading up to it, like, you see her face being like, okay, like, keep it together.
I have to still win this. It's still a performance.
Like you said, I think her rebuttal could be its own broken down, its own hours-long discussion, because it is like this goes down for me in like the best of the best, like final tribal council speeches.
Absolutely.
Like the best of the best Big Brother finale conversation speeches. Like the best like monologues we get in reality TV. Like I think this response from Phaedra Parks is it.
So good.
And there's more. So she goes on to say, like, Dan, you've got knowledge of this game. So if there was ever a mastermind, it's not going to be a dolled up house.
Which already still planting the seeds, deflecting from her and Sheree, solidifying the Bravo not aligned.
The fact that she is so effectively deflecting while calling out his inability to deflect,
absolutely,
and the fact that it's working for her is masterful.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah, and then she says, let's not forget that you tried to murder Berg last night. Like, why would she want him out? You're the one that has problems with him, which is exactly true.
And he's like, well, I didn't say you murdered him. And she said, but you think I'm the killer.
Yeah.
Like,
that's what we're dealing with.
Ready to read. Like, so good.
So, that combo's kind of wrapped up, and then you start kind of going around the table with the rest of the conversations of the day. Peter says it's pretty clear that CT's not in the running to be a traitor anymore. Nothing has really come of telling him the lie. Parvati tries to go and point out the clique. Like, if you're not in Peter's group, you're probably going to get murdered.
You're gonna
so
be
next.
Scared.
Yep.
Yeah. Which I think is really smart. That is her only option now that she doesn't have Dan anymore. That she's trying to sow the seeds of what else to protect the traitors. Yeah.
But she's not piling on Phaedra.
No, I know.
Which I think is interesting, because I think she's like, she doesn't want to
She's protecting herself.
She doesn't want to appear sided with Dan.
And still socially aware of like the tides of the group, that it's such a fine balance that you have to do, that I think the Survivor girls have a better, people who go through Survivor feels like they're more well suited in that game.
It's faster.
Yeah.
Like, there's still time, but it's
only like
you have to make calls.
These Big Brother players are used to having too much time to rally. And if I'm being honest, between people who play Survivor and people who play Big Brother, I think that people who play Survivor tend to just be a little more with it. They're just a little more like, they just are better at it. And I think in Big Brother, you get a lot of duds.
You do. You do.
You get a lot of duds.
There's a lot of duds.
There's a reason why people stop There's a reason why people stop watching after top 5, because it's like, well, okay, you worked your alliance in the finals. Yeah, then we're done.
Then you're done.
And that's why this show is so much better, because we still see people we love leaving, and we're still invested in figuring it out.
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
So then it gets to Parvati, and she has to explain kind of why she was associated with Dan, right? She said she was trusting Dan, and Peter's interrupting, saying, don't buy this argument.
I know. Peter's coming in hot, but he knows he's going to die tonight.
Yes.
So, she says, I started talking and working with Dan on day 1 because I knew he was a great game player. Maybe I trusted the wrong person. Parv gets the last word kind of here, and then it's time to vote. So the votes fall in relatively obvious manner. Phaedra, Sandra, John, Parv, Kevin, and Trishelle, CT, Sheree, Bergie, Kate, and MJ all vote for Dan. And there are some choice quotes here. John says, your deflection on Phaedra was rebutted. Treachery deserves to be punished by banishment. He calls him the silent slaughterer.
Very politician. Very House of Commons.
Very House of
He
Commons.
knows why he's in the show. He knows why he's cast.
Let me
he
deliver
knows this
these
is what
lines.
they want. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Peter goes on to vote for Parvati and say, we've had enough votes on Dan, so I just want people to know that Parvati's not getting off
Absolutely
on this vote, right?
Ooh, risky.
And you see the face journey on Parvati reacting to that vote from Peter to her, and you also see her reacting to Dan getting votes. But then she votes for Dan, and she seems great about that. Dan walks into the circle, very quickly reveals that he's a traitor.
Yeah.
When Dan voted
for Phaedra, he says that I should have known better than to go against such an elegant lawyer. And I think everyone has said in the show that like he was always such a class act because he knows that it's a game. And I do think even though this was not his best showing, right? Like he did not do what he sought out to do. That's the energy that you have to give in these games in order to really not have a good experience, go into it that this is a game.
You can't be super salty in the postseason, and he knows better. Even Janelle, like I said, like she's been fun on Twitter ever since she was banished. Like, and she knows she's gonna keep getting booked. It's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
I think they're gonna play it up in the reunion, obviously, because it's the reunion. But I don't feel, because I genuinely think everyone is having fun in the show.
Yeah.
That I think that's why people come out of it and being like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's tweet at each other, blah, blah, blah.
We can have a discussion like adults.
Yeah, they're not taking it too personally.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So, we get the wrap up from Dan. He talks about, he was retired from shows, I guess, for 10 years. And it took a special game to bring him back. But tonight he made a mistake.
Bye.
Bye. So I guess we're going to see from here on out, is Phaedra a suspect or not?
Right.
That's kind of the next question. And you get the only person we hear from that says, maybe they should be thinking about this is, of all people in this game, Trishelle.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
Yeah, I do think there's something here of like, I want every single person to just tell me what they think of Dan throwing out Phaedra's name. Like, do the majority think like, that's wild? Or do some of them actually think from Trishelle, like, okay, if I'm working backwards here, Dan was a traitor. Yep. His only move was to throw out Phaedra. Is that legit? Like, is that an actual name we should be going after? Because like we haven't really seen such an obvious traitor go out so focused on one person. I think typically we see traitors go out just trying to defend themselves, just scrambling and trying to like just stay in the game. No one comes in pointing the finger so firmly like he was. So it's interesting that we only hear from Trishelle, like you're saying, but I really wonder, like, does the focus then move to Phaedra or does it actually stay on Parvati? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
I guess it's gonna depend on what this Peter we're about to see here.
What happens.
Totally.
Yeah. Bergie is going wild like it is Christmas morning, running from group to group.
Christmas morning.
He is on cloud 9. Phaedra's celebrating with the faithfuls. We don't see Parvati celebrating really. We see the faithful 5, and Sandra said, "Hey, let's go in and see what they're doing over there." Parvati says, they're putting off a lot of people by like constantly going into rooms and closing the doors. But everyone in that room says, we're coming for Parv next. So,
and at this point, you don't need more than 5 or 6 votes to get someone out. Yeah. And it seems like these people are finally on to like, maybe we should align on a person before we go into the round table.
Yeah.
The days of random votes.
They're going to start like it, like you were saying, even an episode or two ago, like it increasingly becomes a numbers game. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
At least to get through the round table.
That is how cirie won masterfully.
So then it's time to go to the turret.
Turret time.
We see Phaedra and Parv, kind of debriefing what happened at the round table. Parvati says, that was dark. Phaedra says, if I wasn't a Christian woman, I'd rip his heart out.
If I wasn't a Christian woman.
Another good line.
God.
they talk about the alliance and, say that Peter is the ringleader of that. That's very obvious to everybody. They're not even trying to hide that. And, Parvati says they should not do the obvious thing and take out Peter as the murderer.
I hard agree on that.
Which
I
is a
hard agree on that.
Very good agree. And then you get a knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Alan comes in and he says, hey girlies.
Hey girlies,
guess what?
The rules of the game state.
Yeah, the rules of the game state, when a traitor is gone, you have the opportunity
when the numbers are less than 3, basically.
Numbers are less than 3, you have the opportunity to recruit a new traitor, and they can accept or decline. If they decline, they will stay in the game. Or you can murder tonight. So you got to pick one of those things. Yeah, what do we think about this opportunity for them? What would you do?
Okay, I mean, it's tough, and I think Phaedra Phaedra comes out of this in the best position because she's like, Parvati, you're next, so this is your call. Do what you think is worth.
Like we said at the top of the episode, you do whatever you think you need because you get attention, and I will stay over here and play along.
It's very different from the last season and the UK versions where, like, in the turret, they're not really like coming to like a group consensus.
No.
They're letting each other kind of like make calls, right? And then just kind of sitting back and going with that, which is a different approach from what we see on other seasons.
Yeah, totally.
So, Parvati says, we've got to recruit. We had to shake it up. Let's go for Peter. Let's start to turn the tables and see if we can get Peter on our side rather than against us, right?
Yeah.
And Parvati's like, this is my fate, right? Like, my fate is my fate, and I'm really good at surviving. So, like, this is her opportunity to try and turn things around. They say, let's get the most blue blood faithful detective to turn on his own posse.
What's this?
So Peter gets a letter, and we don't know if he accepts.
We don't know what he's gonna say.
Yeah,
I think to comment on this, I do think it's the only option. Right. It is the only option.
Yeah,
and I think this could play out a few ways. I do think Peter will accept. I think he will accept.
I think he understands it's a game, and that
I also
he could win.
That the offer should be accept or be murdered.
I
was
know.
That a version? That was last season. Season. And that, because now, imagine Peter saying no and then going like, I was recruited,
what
y'all.
I kept
like,
thinking.
Why would you put that much control in someone's, like, a game that's designed for the Traitors? It seems really weird to me that that's not the way this goes.
Yeah.
All of that aside, I think Peter will accept. I think he is the only option. And I think that either he jumps on board with Parvati and Phaedra and they, try to turn the tide, or chaos, and Parvati has some real, builds some real ammo here to keep pointing the finger. And I think that she could just go with she could do this and still bring him to the round table, get the crew to banish him, just to have him go up there and admit that he's a traitor, even though it had been like 1 week.
I didn't think about that, Brandon. Wait.
Yeah, this could be what she's like. Imagine she did that, and then that's 2 names really fast, and she could have said, "I was telling you this a couple weeks ago.
I was telling you the truth the entire time. I've been faithful this entire time."
And I know that at breakfast they're going to know that someone was recruited because Alan will tell them someone was recruited. That's why no one was murdered.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think this is the only option. I think he says yes, and I think Parvati throws him under the bus real quick.
We'll see.
It's my prediction.
We shall see.
There was a good Phaedra line before we got to this where she said, "Light it on fire, Parvati."
Light it on Parvati. The amount of ways that the name Parvati has been pronounced in one show.
So good.
So good.
All right.
So, okay, wait, just real quick. So I say he'll accept. What do y'all think?
I think he's going to accept.
I think he's also going to accept.
Yeah, okay. So we have 3 on the accepts. We'll find out next week.
Find out. All right. Should we look at Alan's looks?
Okay. Which
another one where we're just layering here.
We are just layering, and then the full layer is at the evening with the hat that we've seen before, and then
the coat. So
I mean, it's if the girls.
What's your favorite piece?
Honestly, it's the gloves.
Great. Why? Why is it the gloves?
It's something that you don't really see.
And it perfectly matches the
It
kilt.
perfectly matches the kilt, and it still color matches the whole outfit. I think it's the gloves.
Yeah. You
Or with this individual piece.
or I think when it's like the one when it's
Yeah.
paper dolled, like we've been talking about, you just
Which I think is going to be what's the
Yeah,
the
I mean,
gag for
I think I like it in the second, the mission iteration with the
The
cloak on
outdoors.
top. Yeah, the outdoorsy. I do like the boot. The boot is a nice contrast to the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I always love an all black look, so the turret look is reliable as well.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think the middle one's the most unique.
Yeah.
unique.
We got soundboard.
We do need a Phaedra soundboard. It's just Phaedra's lines. Oh, for me, I am going with. Yeah, come on.
I know you
This
were
is my
leading it.
segment.
I
I
know
love
you were
this
leading it,
segment.
so I was like, okay, great.
I think I volunteered this segment to the outline. So for me, it's the blouse. 100%.
I know. That was the other one that I was gonna pick too.
The blouse.
The girls gagged at the blouse, and we should respect that they get to see it in real life.
He's really trying to vie for best blouse on TV.
Oh, yeah.
A la Ross Matthews.
Oh my
Because Ross has his line of blouses that he also sells,
And he also is one.
and
He's allegedly.
for all of those things. But I think this blouse wins for me.
This is the blouse
This is
for
a
me.
better blouse.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Final question.
So the final question is, who are we most faithful to? And I I did not do this last week. So we are
okay.
going to do this live. I'm going to open the Canva and we're going to do this
Okay, make
right
it together.
now.
Great.
Okay.
I think I'm ready for this week. Are you?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Wow.
All right. Canva Arts.
Built by Canva.
Built
Miss
by Canva. Thank
Yeah.
you,
So if
Canva.
you're not watching the YouTube version, this is where you really should be.
Okay, so I'm actually going to stay consistent from my choice the last 2 weeks. I'm going to say Sandra.
Oh,
I'm staying parked on Sandra because I
did
think
you
she's
say
in it for the
you
long
said
game.
Sandra last week?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm
Okay.
going to fix that real quick. Look at all of my beautiful pictures of all the things that I've made on Canva.
So for those who aren't looking, we're looking at
We're looking at a
RJ
lot
working
of
live on
headshots,
Canva.
a lot
of
of
screen
screen
grabs.
grabs. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Drop her in, drop and crop.
Drop and crop. There's my headshot. There we go.
Dragon, there she is.
Beep, bop,
Boom.
boop.
Beep, bop, boop.
Sandra.
That's how we do it.
And this is how you use Canva.
Yeah. So everyone, watch me.
Yeah.
Watch
if you're not
me.
watching,
Yeah.
you really need to watch. Okay.
I'm gonna add her in here too.
Beautiful. So last week I said Kate. I mean, I think that was a great choice given
I
what
think so
happened
too.
last
We've
week.
given the grief from Janelle. Yeah.
This week, purely because of the rebuttal at the round table, I am Phaedra.
Your Phaedra.
Yeah, I like that whole monologue fueled me. We watched this on an airplane. And
I know.
it was like
we saw
every-
the. I'm going to show the picture right now of
Oh my
you
God.
Oh,
trying
yeah,
to
it's good.
download the episode as you're walking to the.
Yeah. I am like notorious for being too loud on an airplane wearing noise canceling headphones, and I was like trying to keep my cool because it was so good. But yeah, I would say Phaedra. And I already knew what was going to happen, and it was still good. So Phaedra for me this week. What about you?
I am going to make a bold prediction that Parvati survives. I think
Okay.
maybe she doesn't. Okay, maybe she doesn't survive this elimination, but I think she will do enough damage. You sold me on your theory that she could get on either as she leaves or gets Peter out, and then is revealed to be a traitor, and that I feel the main character
she's gonna build
from
some
her
some
something.
strength by getting that kill for them. Yeah,
I think so too.
that's my theory. We'll see.
So I'd be down with that.
It's crazy. The one
right.
time we've only given a man a faithful to was Bergie last week, which I mean, honestly, it worked out.
It's
in his
interesting
favor.
that
He did a
went.
great
To,
job.
it's interesting that went to Bergie and not Peter.
Yes, because we love Bergie. I think
Peter's
Bergie's way
Bergalicious.
absolutely. It's not Peterlicious. It's Bergielicious.
Yeah, it's Bergalicious. Okay.
Oh my god.
So next week we don't get teased very much about what's coming. So I mean, it's just going to be what happens with Peter. Does he accept? And
Does he
then
accept or
kind of
not?
what
Yeah.
goes from there.
Yeah.
Work. What was that? That was 4 episodes. So we still have 5 episodes.
We have 5 episodes.
Yeah. We still got a lot to do.
There's still a lot of work to be done. Truly. I believe we did. I just want to read some. There were a few comments that have happened from some of our past episodes. So
let's see. Oh, and we also have to see the download if you have it.
Someone said CT is so thick. And we literally said it, we said
stick with 3 C's, right?
3 C's, challenge donk. And someone recommended that we search up CT Johnny Bananas backpack to see CT in his full glory. I only watched a few seasons of the challenge, but that clip is searched into my memory.
Oh, yep, that's something that comes right up. It's an autocomplete.
Really? Oh my god.
They're like in their, if I could describe for my audio girlies, they're in harnesses attached to each other at the back.
Oh, I see.
And they're probably trying to drag each other to a different. We'll YouTube it later. We've got fan art.
Wow.
You could get it on a shirt.
From our last episode, someone left a comment. Rocky said, I was praying our Jamie doll would make it to the end or at least outlast Dan. Whenever Janelle leaves too early, it stings and never gets any easier. Kevin is so dumb, and the way he cut off Kate was an ick. I'm still trying to understand what's the point of bringing in Kate midway. I think a cool twist would have been that she is the sole vote at banishment, so they use this as a way to get her to speed, and everyone states their case as to who should go. I really hope Dan goes next episode.
That would have been interesting.
Which she does. And people say, damn, Janelle was right. I'm so over Dan. And then you commented this. my fellow Janelle army.
Yes. And where was the vindication for Janelle in this episode? It better come next week.
It pretty much just, yes, I hope so too. I hope Bergie, because Bergie was the one who iconically said, we're going to get Dan for you, Janelle.
Are you just watching CT video? They're just, oh my.
Ooh.
It's physical.
We'll watch that
Ooh,
later.
it's physical, bitch.
I bet there's fanfic of that.
Oh, I'm sure. I will report next week if there is CT bananas. Phaedra, yes. Please get on the Phaedra CT fanfiction. Please, someone out there. Well, if you have enjoyed the show, please write comments on the YouTube. Leave
like, comment, subscribe.
Trader
Apple
Joe's,
Podcasts.
Thank you so much. We have survived another week of banishment.
We have.
So can't wait to see what happens next. All right. Thanks, everyone. And don't forget, stay faithful. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Discovering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.